The notification came at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning. I was still in my pajamas, coffee going cold on the counter, when my phone lit up with a Venmo request, $847, from my mother. The note just said, "Dinner last night." Huh! I set the phone face down and stood there for a long moment, staring at the kitchen wall. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel surprised, which was maybe the saddest part of all. I need to back up. My name is Willa. I'm 31 years old. I work remotely as a UX designer for a mid-sized software company based out of Seattle. I live in Ohio. They don't care. I submit good work. They pay me well. When I say well, I mean well by Ohio standards. I make $112,000 a year. I own a small house. I drive a 5-year-old Subaru with a cracked phone mount I keep meaning to replace. My family thinks I make around $48,000. I never exactly lied. When I first got the job, right out of college, I told my mom I was making around 40-something. That was the starting salary. Over the years, the raises came, and I just never corrected the record. At first, it felt awkward to bring up. Then it felt easier not to. Then it became a kind of protection I didn't know I needed until the request started. It began small. My elder brother, I'll just call him my brother, he lost his job during the pandemic. Mom called and asked if I could help cover his car insurance for a few months, $187 a month. I said yes. 3 months became 7, 7 became 14. The car insurance became his phone bill too, then his storage unit, then half his rent when his girlfriend kicked him out. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was struggling and I was lucky, and family helps family. That's what my mom always said growing up. Family helps family, Willa. She said it when she needed my dad to fix her sister's furnace. She said it when my grandmother needed someone to drive her to dialysis every Thursday for 2 years. It was always presented as something beautiful, this idea. I believed in it for a long time. What I didn't understand, what took me years to understand, is that in my family, family helps family only flowed in one direction. It flowed toward whoever was loudest. My brother was loud. My mother could be louder. My dad mostly stayed quiet and let my mother run the financial conversations, which she was extremely skilled at. She had this way of framing every request as barely a request at all, more like a gentle administrative update. "Oh, we're just a little short this month, you know how it is." Or, "I told your brother you might be able to help. I hope that's okay. I already told him." The decision presented as already made. "Your job, just to confirm." I confirmed, most of the time, for years. The Venmo request for $847 was for a dinner I hadn't been at. Let me tell you what happened. My cousin was getting married. Well, not married, engaged. There was an engagement dinner at a restaurant called Harlow and Stone, which is the kind of place that has a 14-page wine menu and charges $34 for a side of roasted carrots. My mom had organized the dinner. My aunt was there, my cousin and her fiancé, the fiancé's parents, my brother and his girlfriend of 4 months. I was not there. I was on a work deadline. I'd told my mom 2 weeks earlier I couldn't make it. She said she understood. She said they'd keep it small. The bill came to $1,390. My mom paid it on her credit card in the moment. I found this out later, and then came home and divided it by what she considered fair. She sent my aunt $280. She sent my cousin nothing because they're the guests of honor. She sent me $847. Her math, best I could reconstruct, she decided I should cover the bulk since I was the one with a good job and I would have wanted to be there anyway. I called her. "Mom, I wasn't there." "I know, honey, but it was family. You would have come if you could. That's not how bills work. Don't be dramatic. It's not a big deal. You can afford it." That phrase, "you can afford it." She'd started saying it maybe 2 years ago, and it landed differently every time. Sometimes like an accusation, sometimes like a compliment, always like a door being opened that I hadn't unlocked. I paid the $847. I'm not proud of that. I paid it because the alternative was a 3-day guilt spiral that would have cost me more in sleep and productivity than the money itself. I paid it and told myself it was the last time. It was not the last time. 3 weeks later, my brother called. He'd gotten into a car accident. His fault, minor fender bender, but his insurance had lapsed because apparently he'd stopped paying it, which I hadn't known because I thought I was still covering it. But at some point he'd told me he'd taken care of it, and I hadn't followed up. His deductible was $1,500. Could I help? I said I'd cover half. I transferred $750. A month after that, my mom called to tell me my dad had been diagnosed with a pinched nerve in his back. He needed a few sessions with a specialist. Insurance covered some, but not all. She was asking everyone to chip in. What everyone meant in practice, she'd asked my aunt, who said she was tight, and she hadn't actually asked anyone else, just me. The sessions were $240 each, 6 total. She asked if I could cover 2 of them. I covered 4. I want to be clear about something. I don't tell this to make myself sound noble. I tell it because I have to be honest about my own role in what happened. I enabled this. I kept saying yes because saying yes felt like love, felt like being good, felt like honoring this idea I had of myself as someone generous and capable and not defined by money. I grew up watching my parents stretch every dollar, watching my mom click coupons and my dad work doubles, and some part of me wanted to be the person who could finally make things easier for everyone. I wanted to be the solution to a problem that had existed in my family long before I had any money to offer. What I didn't see, what I refused to see, is that you can't solve a structural problem with individual generosity. Every time I covered something, the message my family received wasn't Willa loves us. The message was, Willa has money and will give it if we ask. The request never slowed down. They got more confident. The engagement dinner charge was the first time my family requested money for something I wasn't present for. It wasn't the last. In the spring, my cousin's wedding was coming up. My mom was coordinating again. She loved coordinating, loved being the one who managed logistics. It gave her a kind of authority she found very satisfying. She called me in February to talk about contributing to the wedding gift. A group gift, she said. Something meaningful. She was thinking a cash contribution toward the couple's honeymoon fund. She thought $800 from me would be appropriate. That seems like a lot for a group gift, I said. It's family, she said. Your aunt is doing $400. Your uncle is doing $300. Your uncle is doing $300. I figured you could cover the difference since they're a little stretched. So the group gift is me making up for what everyone else can't afford? Silence. I just think, she said carefully, that you're in a position to be generous. Not everyone is so lucky. I contributed $500. She did not thank me for it. By summer, I had given my family approximately $23,000 over 3 years. I know the exact number because I'd started keeping a document, not to hold over anyone. I told myself at the time I was just tracking for my own taxes, in case any of it counted as a deductible gift. But the real reason was that I needed proof for myself that this was real. That the amounts were what I thought they were, that I wasn't imagining it or exaggerating. $23,000 in 3 years. To a family that thought I made $48,000 a year. They thought I was giving everything I had. They thought I was stretching for them, sacrificing. They were grateful in the way people are grateful when they believe a sacrifice is being made. But no one asked me once, not once, whether this was manageable, whether I was okay, whether I had savings of my own, whether there was anything I needed. My boyfriend, we'd been together 2 years by this point, had been watching all of this with increasing concern. He's not a dramatic person, not a confrontational person. He chose his words carefully. One night in August, he said, I think your family believes a version of you that doesn't exist. I asked him what he meant. They think you're the family member who's doing a little better, who helps when she can. They don't know they're treating you like an ATM because they don't know how much they've actually taken. He wasn't wrong. But what I said was, they'd feel terrible if they knew. Would they? He asked. I didn't answer. The breaking point didn't announce itself dramatically. It came on a Wednesday afternoon in October when I was on a work call and my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. I glanced at it between screens. Your brother's landlord is threatening to evict him. He's $2,400 behind. I told him you might be able to help. Call me tonight. I finished my work call. I sat at my desk for 15 minutes without moving. Then I opened my document. The one with the running total, $23,412. That was what I had given in 3 years, not counting the engagement dinner, not counting the wedding gift, not counting a dozen smaller things I probably hadn't logged. I thought about what $23,000 would have been otherwise. A down payment addition, a solo trip to Portugal I'd been moving to someday for 3 years, a real emergency fund instead of the threadbare one I actually had, therapy, which I kept putting off because I felt guilty spending money on myself. I didn't call my mom that night. She called me. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I let that go too. She texted, "Willa, this is urgent, please call." I texted back, "I'll call tomorrow." That night, I opened a new document and started writing everything down, not just the amounts, but the circumstances, every request, every guilt trip, every time a decision had been presented to me as already made. Every time I'd been told I was lucky in a tone that made luck sound like a debt I owed. I wrote for 2 hours. Then I called my boyfriend in the other room. I handed him the laptop. He read it quietly. When he finished, he looked up and said, "So what do you want to do?" It was the first time anyone had asked me that. What do I want? I thought about it seriously, maybe for the first time. I did not want to disappear from my family. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't angry in a hot, explosive way. I was tired. Deeply, structurally tired, the kind of tired that had settled into my bones over 3 years of giving and receiving nothing back except the unspoken expectation to keep giving. What I wanted was to stop, and to stop in a way that was honest. I called my mom the next morning. I told her I wasn't going to cover my brother's back rent. She started the usual sequence, the sigh, the pause, the gentle reframe. "He's really struggling, Willa. You know how hard he's had it." I let her finish. Then I said, "Mom, I've given you and the family over $23,000 in the last 3 years. Silence. "What?" Her voice changed. "That can't be right. I have records of every transfer, every Venmo, every check. No, it wasn't that much." "It was. I can send you the document." More silence. Then, "Why didn't you say something? If it was too much, because every time I tried to slow down, I was told it was about family, that I was lucky, that I could afford it." "You can afford it," she said, and then caught herself. "I mean, how do you know what I can afford, Mom? You think I make $48,000. The silence this time was different. Longer. "What do you actually make?" And there it was, the question that reframed everything. I told her. I told her my actual salary, my actual savings, my actual financial picture. I told her because I was done letting the gap between what they believed and what was real protect them from the reality of what they'd been doing. My mom was quiet for a long time after I said the number. Finally, she said, "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because this is exactly what would happen," I said. "You would decide what I could afford. You would decide what was appropriate for me to give. You've been doing that on a smaller scale for 3 years. I can only imagine what it would have looked like if you'd known." I don't think she had a response to that. She said she needed to think. We got off the phone. What happened over the next 2 weeks was not a movie moment. Nobody came to me with flowers and a tearful apology. My brother called, angry, and told me I was being selfish. My aunt called my mom and said she'd heard I was causing drama. My mom sent me a long text that started with, "I want you to know I love you," and ended with, "I just hope you understand how this looks from our side." I read it twice. I didn't respond right away. Because here's the thing. I've been waiting my whole adult life for someone in my family to ask how things looked from my side, and it hadn't happened. Not once, in 3 years of giving, had anyone called to ask if I was okay, if I needed anything, if maybe I was stretched too thin. The calls about money were always framed as emergencies. But my well-being was never an emergency to anyone. I took a week. I talked to my boyfriend. I talked to a therapist. Finally, I went to therapy, which cost $150 a session and was worth approximately $10,000 of the dollars I'd given away. My therapist said something that stuck with me. Generosity is a gift. It stops being a gift when it's extracted. I thought about that for a long time. Then I wrote my mom a letter. A real one, on paper. I told her that I loved our family. I told her I had been glad to help during genuine emergencies, and I didn't regret every dollar. I told her that what I couldn't continue was being treated as a resource rather than a person, having my contribution assumed, my capacity decided for me, my absence used as a billing opportunity. I told her I was setting a number. I would give $1,000 per year to family needs, total, divided as I saw fit, by my choice, on my terms, not per request, per year, and I would not be negotiated with. I sealed the letter. I mailed it. My mom called when she got it. She was quieter than I expected. She said, "I didn't realize how it felt." "I know," I said. "That's the problem." We talked for almost an hour. It wasn't resolved. These things don't resolve in an hour. But she listened. Actually listened. She said she was going to talk to my brother about taking responsibility for his own situation. I didn't hold my breath, but I noted it. My brother didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. Then he texted me a meme, a stupid one, a cat doing something undignified. And I laughed and texted back, and we sort of silently agreed to not talk about it directly, which is its own kind of problem, but it's a problem for a different day. The engagement dinner Venmo request, the $847 that started all of this, I never paid it back. My mom never asked again. I used the money instead to finally book that trip to Portugal. 2 weeks. Solo. I ate good food and walked until my feet ached and sat in a square in Lisbon on a warm evening with a glass of wine. I paid for myself and didn't feel guilty about a single sip of it. My boyfriend asked me when I got back if the trip was everything I'd hoped. It was, I said. It was exactly what I needed. He asked what I thought made the difference, the trip itself or something else. I thought about it. I stopped paying for dinners. I didn't eat, I said. He laughed. I laughed too. And that was it, really. That was the whole lesson in the end. Not that family doesn't deserve help. Not that generosity is wrong. But that you are allowed to only pay for what you actually consumed. That your seat at the table is worth exactly as much as the seat you actually occupied. That love does not require you to cover a bill you never agreed to, for a meal you were never served, at a table you were never sitting at. I know that now. It only cost me $23,000 and 3 years to learn it. If you're somewhere in the middle of what I just described, if you're keeping a mental tally you're too afraid to write down, if you've paid a bill and told yourself last time, if someone in your family says you can afford it in that particular tone, write it down. Seriously. Open a document right now and write the number. Then ask yourself, when was the last time they asked if you were okay? That answer will tell you everything. I've thought a lot about why it took me 3 years. 3 years and $23,000 before I finally said no. And the honest answer isn't that I was naive. I'm not naive. I'm good at my job. I manage complex projects. I make real decisions under pressure every single day. The honest answer is that I had confused 2 things for a very long time. I had confused love with compliance. Every time I transferred money I didn't want to transfer, I told myself it was love. Every time I swallowed the frustration and hit confirm, I thought I was being the bigger person. What I was actually doing was teaching everyone around me that my discomfort had no weight, that my yes was guaranteed, that the cost of asking me was 0. And that's the thing about cause and effect that nobody warns you about when it comes to family. The consequences don't arrive dramatically. They arrive quietly, in the form of more requests. The pattern I allowed to start small became the pattern I had to dismantle loudly later. What I permitted became what was expected. That's not someone else's fault. That's mine. Owning that was the hardest part of this whole story. My mom isn't a villain. My brother isn't either. Not really. They are people who learned that a certain behavior produced a certain result, and they kept doing the behavior. That's just how people work. The problem was never that they asked. The problem was that I answered in a way that made the next ask inevitable. What changed for me wasn't anger. Anger came and went. What actually changed was the moment I sat down and wrote the number, $23,412. Seeing it in a document, stark and specific, did something that years of vague guilt and vague resentment couldn't do. It made the situation undeniable. I could no longer tell myself it was fine. I could no longer perform the generosity I no longer felt. The numbers were just sitting there, completely unmoved by my feelings about them. That's what I mean when I say intelligence isn't just about being smart. It's about being willing to look at what's true even when what's true is uncomfortable. For 3 years, I chose comfort over clarity. I chose the easier version of events. I'm helping, I'm generous, this is what good people do, over the accurate version, which was, I am being systematically asked to fund other people's choices, and I keep saying yes, because I'm afraid of what happens if I say no. Naming the fear was what finally gave me back the choice. And the choice itself, the letter I sent, the boundary I set, the $1,000 annual limit I decided on and actually held, that took something different. That took the willingness to be uncomfortable in a new way. Not the dull, familiar discomfort of giving money I resented, but the sharp, unfamiliar discomfort of disappointing people who had counted on me, never to disappoint them. My brother didn't speak to me for 6 weeks. That was hard. I sat with that and didn't cave. That's what I'd tell anyone who's somewhere in the middle of this, not to cut people off, not to hold grudges, but to understand that holding a line isn't cruelty. It's the only way the people you love ever get the chance to figure out what they're actually capable of. My brother is handling his own rent now, not because I pushed him away, because I stopped being the option. Portugal was beautiful, by the way. I put it off for 3 years. It was worth every single day I waited.